Aloha, everyone. My name is Aldrin Guerrero. I'm joined by Magic Mike Odo over here. What's up, Mike?
Hi, guys.
How's it going? Professor Mike Odo. Also, Mr. Aaron the Voice, Nakamura. So what's up, Aaron?
What's up?
And Kahai the Legend Fergan. So what's up, Kahai?
What's up?
Welcome to Thursday Live Lessons. This is the place where you get to answer any and all of your questions, and to us, we try to answer them as best as we can. Sometimes, not always, we have to seek outside help. like if the Avengers reached out to the X-Men and said, "Hey, we need your help fighting this thing." So that's why he is the Jean Grey of my life. Did you believe?
It's an Asian joke right there. If you don't get
Has
it.
that ever happened? I feel like it's always the X-Men who are like, we done goof. We
Oh,
need
yeah.
Avengers.
Yeah.
Can you help us?
So you are the Scarlett Johansson. No, but Mike is here, everyone. Yeah, Professor Mike Odo.
Oh my god.
So just we you know what, we promise, we deliver. You know, we're like dominoes.
By the way, Kahai side note, the best one like that is X-Men and Star Trek.
Oh.
They actually did a comic series on that. They did a comic crossover.
But yeah, so this show, Thursday Live Lessons, is a place where you can ask any of all your questions. Like we said, try to answer them as best as we can. We get them all different ways. We get them during via the UU Plus forums, emails, and we have a live chat going on right now because this is Thursday Live Lessons, so you can ask all your questions live, and we'll try to get to them as best as we can. Aaron and Kahai are on standby right now. They are answering your questions or talking to you via the live chat, and we are going to be discussing a bunch of the questions that you guys may have had, but we can add some of the questions you guys will send in via the chat. So let's get started. Yeah, shall we? So before we get started with any of the future questions, let's go back to the past. Let's call upon your Jean Grey powers. Go back to the past.
Hit the DeLorean.
Hit the DeLorean and answer a question from, I believe, 2 weeks ago, right?
Before we even go to that, right?
Oh,
wasn't there something that you wanted to mention, Mike, about we mentioned dynamics? That's why.
Yeah. Okay,
Okay, music nerd moment.
Next, like last week. That was last week's show.
Okay. Music nerd moment. He was talking about different dynamic levels, loud to soft. So everything in music, traditional music, is Italian. So piano means soft, forte means loud, and then he said forte and then fortissimo, which means two Fs, really loud. And what a lot of people may not know is that SI in the middle of the word, you keep adding one for every F. So it's forte, then fortissimo, which is one F, then fortissimo, which is two Fs,
So
fortissimo.
three Fs.
Yeah.
Right?
Three Fs is three Fs. Yeah.
So you're adding
So every time you add an F, you add another SI in the middle of the word. And that's true on the other degree with piano. So piano is soft. Pianissimo is really soft. Pianissimo is...
So what is
really,
five
really...
pianos?
Okay, so that's 5 pianos. Pianissimo.
It sounds like somebody who has a stuttering problem.
Pianissimo? Is that
No,
CC?
4.
Oh,
Pianissimo.
And fortissimo.
Yes.
Is 5 Fs.
At that point, are you even playing anymore? Right?
Blow on your instrument as loud as you can, or strum as loud as you can.
Okay, he probably doesn't remember this. Mm-hmm. But as he mentioned last week, Kahai used to be in a band that I used to teach.
Yeah.
So, if you do it, you might remember this.
Maybe.
I always harped on dynamics.
Yeah.
I always talked about dynamics, saying that, and I still to this day tell my kids this: if you don't have proper dynamics in your playing, all you have is loud.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Everybody defaults to loud. Okay.
I don't want to say it.
but if loud is all you have, then there's no ebb, there's no flow, there's no up, there's no down in music. It's all just right in your face. Now, for some things, that might be acceptable. I.e., like if you go into a Metallica concert, yeah, it probably should be loud most of the time. But even then, if you think about it, there's a lot of Metallica songs that aren't just blasting loud. It's like there's soft parts and then it gets loud. And that change from soft to loud just like hits your ears and it makes you interested. It makes you, But I can tell you, I always say, guys, you're playing too loud. No, this part you gotta be soft, play softer. So
high school kids have a hard time with that.
my high school kids still have a hard time with that.
I want to play loud. I want to play loud. I think like Jake's for.
Early in the
I think
show.
I know. I think his first DVD was called "Play Loud Ukulele," right?
Yeah.
So that's a throwback. If you guys haven't seen that DVD yet, check it out. It's awesome. It's got a nice live performance from Japan that he did. It's a DVD called "Play Loud Ukulele." Oh, you have the.
I brought one just in case.
Yeah. And I would say that it's his fault. He's encouraging people to play fortissimo.
He definitely would be one of the first guys who took that out there.
Jake, just chill.
It was loud, and then he started plugging in all the pedals and stuff.
Yeah.
So like all the Toastman songs, there was always going to be one part where the pedals hit, and like your speakers start to rattle and your ears bleed.
Yeah. So check that out. My favorite tune from that DVD is there. My favorite Jake song, which is Equator. Equator's in that DVD. Mm-hmm. It's awesome. You should check it out. If you haven't seen it yet, check it out. I know they're always like hyping up his newer stuff, but his old catalog is way more awesome.
My favorite Jake song that's not a Jake song is also on that DVD, which is Spain.
Oh yeah.
I love that song.
I played that with Abel Agreements this past weekend.
Did
at
you?
least 5 seconds of it. He showed me like how to actually play that song, and I'm like, oh, I don't remember any of it. But one of these days, I'm gonna learn Spain, and I'm gonna be like, hey Abe, let's play Spain together. And he's like, you still missed the chord.
That's Spain by Chick Corea?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have to play it slow.
Yeah, he could probably just blaze through it.
I wanted to make the joke like, wait, what do you mean that's not a Jake song? But I actually know the original song.
Well, in so Jake did I think in E minor, and I think Abe plays it in an F minor or like a C minor or something, so that everything is just kind of open. So he kind of showed me a way to kind of play that song easier anyway. But yeah, well, if I ever learn it, I'll teach it here in Ukulele on the ground.
Whiteboard request.
Long whiteboard request. The longest 5-hour whiteboard request lesson ever.
Going on hour number 2
of Spain.
We're hour number 2. Welcome to bar 8.
Yeah. The whole year is just like every single month is just a new part of Spain.
We're just gonna use this wall as the whiteboard.
Spain 2020. all of 2020 is just nothing but Spain.
I'm sorry, my IV drip stopped for a little bit. Okay.
All right. So let's tackle the big one. Let's tackle the chord substitution question. Kahai, do you have it so that we can remind the audience what that question was that we brought Mike's special down here for?
Yeah. So this is from George, and he just asked
Harrison.
No, because he would know.
You should know better.
He would know this one.
I've actually seen George, and I do not think it's the Harrison one. But he's a cool guy. He said, in the next live lesson, could you discuss chord substitution and solo arrangements to give any chord melody song more color and jazz feel? Mm-hmm. And I kind of talked to him a little bit back and forth, and he said specifically he was thinking about doing it for your arrangement of Amazing Grace.
Amazing Grace, which is in C. So let's all think about that. Now, to begin, here are the chords. I'm going to give the chords to Mike. The chords are going to be C, Amazing Grace, then to F, how sweet the C, and C, and C, then to G, back to C, then C, goes to F, and back to C, and C, then G, then C.
These aren't the lyrics, I know.
Yeah. Okay, so those are the chords right there. We wrote them down, and these are things that you can do to substitute those chords. So Mike is going to be explaining them right now. So go ahead, take the floor, sir.
So there are a bunch of things you can do with this. Basically, the first thing you can do is add extensions. Now, Aldrin kind of covered this. If you just take, I wouldn't do it with every chord, obviously, because what you're doing is you're trying to add some color. You're trying to add some tension. You're trying to add something to make your ears go like, oh, Okay.
That's
I
nice.
wasn't quite expecting that. Okay. So like a couple things you can do is you could actually I think we talked about making the C's in this like C9s.
Okay, yeah. So
You know?
C9 would be what 1, 3, 5, and 9.
Right.
Okay, so we got 1, 3, 5, and that's 9, which would be our D. So if we were to spell this out, it's going to be G, C, E, D. That's
Instead of
G, C, E, C.
yeah, that's a regular C chord.
Yeah.
Right.
So, to explain this better, if we put numbers on it, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and we're just adding the 9 in there. So 1, 3, 5, 9.
Yep.
That would be our C9. So for those of you folks who are like, how do I play 9 chords? It's really all it is an extension, right? So
Right.
C, which would be that 1, 3, 5, and you add the 9.
Yeah.
And then I asked earlier, Mike, for Mike, because right here, the jump between the G and the D is kind of big for me, and in ukulele. And what I like to do sometimes is, I don't like it to be such a big jump. So I asked him if I could substitute a 2, which would be the octave lower
Right.
on that 9, which would be this 1, 2. So I play my regular C, and then just add that 2. See
Yeah.
if that would work as a C9 as well.
And I could. Technically, it's
Would
a
you
C2.
call it C2?
I would call it a C2 because of where you're putting it in the
Okay.
stack of notes. But really,
Or this.
it's the relationship between the notes. One of the reasons the 9 has that quality is because of where it is in relation to the root.
Okay.
A lot of times.
Yeah.
C2, same thing, but you are using the same note.
Yes.
So generally, anytime you have a 9th chord, you could always use a 2 chord. Generally. And probably get away with it.
Yeah.
Now, keep in mind, this really is kind of dependent on the song you're playing. It depends on the melody you're playing. Okay? So keep this in mind when we're talking about these chord substitutions. Almost invariably, the end judge of whether it's going to work or not is against the melody you're playing or singing. Okay? There's a lot of chord substitutions that on a technical level will work if you're just looking at the chords. Okay? If as soon as you add the melody into this idea, that changes that, and that actually really does take precedence.
Yeah.
Okay, just because you can substitute one chord for another, technically, there are going to be certain times you're playing melodies where the notes would clash with the substituted chord. So unless that's the sound you're going for, unless you're going for like these weird sounds that are gonna kind of clash in your ear, you can't do that. Okay. Especially for a song like Amazing Grace, I pretty much would try to stick away from like
All the dissonance.
crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, a little is going to be fine.
Yeah.
A little, it's going to fatten out some chords, and it's going to lend an interesting quality to the song.
Okay.
But what I really wouldn't do is try and turn Amazing Grace into like this weird, like Trent Reznor, Nine Inch Nails, super dissonant song. I think that probably wouldn't work very well.
All right, so let's test out your first thing, which would be to add 9. So could I add 9s? On all the chords.
Actually, let's try that like that and see what happens.
Speaking of adding a 9, people might have this question: what's the difference between say a C9 and a C add 9?
C and a C9 and a C add 9.
Yes.
Let's see. Well, generally with a C9, you are building it off of a dominant seventh framework.
Okay.
So you would have like the B flat in there if people are looking to do the entire chord all the way up.
Okay.
With a C add 9, you definitely don't have that. So basically, the way you're voicing it right now would
Is a C
almost
add 9.
would be closer to C add 9.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because if I play the true C9,
You should have a B flat in there somewhere too.
I would need 5 strings.
Yes,
right?
exactly. Well, I mean, yeah, technically. I mean, if you could figure out a way to play E, G, B flat, and D,
Yeah.
that technically makes it, that technically has that.
Yeah. That would be a C9 chord.
But,
Yeah. Or maybe this.
but of course, not having the root does kind of throw people off,
Yeah.
I was watching like a harmony video or like chord substitution video, and the guy in it, he said like when it really comes back to is like you can have all these different options, but it really comes back to your own ear and just like picking what chord.
Oh,
sounds good to
absolutely.
you. So yeah, like it kind of like there's all these different things you can do, but then it really does just like, oh, I like this one. This one sounds nice, or this one sounds.
Well, I think, and even that was. I remember someone saying something about that on a live lesson a while ago. I don't even remember if I was here or not, or I just heard it when I listened to it. But that's a very true statement, being that, you know, if it's your music, you know, whatever sounds good to you is where you should go with. You know, if you're writing your own stuff, if you're arranging your own stuff,
yours.
Don't like twist it around or take something that you really like out because somebody else tells you, it doesn't work. Well, it doesn't work to their ears then. It doesn't, it makes no difference.
Kind of like that Mitch Hedberg joke. It's like, this house is a 1-bedroom house, but it's up to me how many bedrooms is in this house. Like, there's a bedroom in the bathroom, there's a bedroom in the kitchen. You know, there's technically a 3-bedroom house. So it's kind of like that. Like, if it's good, if you want to lay down on it, then go lay down on it, right?
And there you go.
All right, so let's test your your thing right now. So we're gonna add the 9s.
Yeah.
So amazing grace, how sweet the sound.
It has a very bluesy sound.
Yeah,
Very
because
bluesy.
that's your. I'm adding the 7 because we're talking about the 7.
Yeah.
So it's in my F9 instead of this. I'm adding that 7 in there.
Yeah.
The sound. Ooh. Okay. Now, if we're just doing add 9s, that could work as well. So, amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me.
Yep.
That's a 9.
So I hope what you're hearing is it's not really changing the song per se. What you're doing is you're simply adding a little more depth to the sound of your background. Now, if you're doing a chord melody deal where you know it's you and the ukulele and you're not singing, it does add a little bit more difficulty because 1 or 2 of your strings are only going to be taken up with the melody notes. Okay, so you have to kind of keep that in mind and put that in the right place. Where you're really gonna find a really wonderful juxtaposition is when the melody note you want to play happens to be the extension note that's going on the chord.
Okay, so let's try that out. And that's actually good that you mentioned that. Why I suggested the C2 instead of the C9 because in the melody line of Amazing Grace and on our arrangement of it is right. So you hit that C. So if I'm hitting that C on that 8 and on the 9, it might be a little bit too close. So I chose to do the C2 instead. So
yeah.
That will be that F9 with the melody line in there. And then that G9 with the C. So that's substituting the 9s, and with the melody line in there on that 1 9 4 9 5 9.
Yeah. So hope that makes sense to you guys. The thing, like I said, the thing is really all you're doing is you're really just adding a little bit more color to the painting here. Okay, you're not really twisting it around and stuff like okay, so extensions. That's a pretty easy one. Another one is just taking some chord and playing it in major and both minor forms.
Ooh, that's
okay.
So how would we how would we do so? I mean, for Kahai's sake, just in case Kahai doesn't know, we'll try to explain it to Kahai, please.
Or before we move on, is there any pros and cons to using the 9? Or using those ideas? To me, when Aldrin was playing it, it sounded interesting and it sounded really good, but it never, because he didn't play any of the major chords, it didn't sound like it resolved ever. It kind of sounded like it was
you were saying that you don't have to do it for every chord, right? And you probably shouldn't do it.
And so, for example, in this situation, you could be 7s, 9s, 11s, 13s the whole way, and then just do a straight C chord on the last one. Because basically what you're doing is, if you're looking at the big picture of the song, if you're doing that, then the whole melody area seems like it's floating a little bit higher, a little bit higher. It's not resolving, it's not resolving, it's not resolving. And kind of what you're doing is you're almost building up a little bit more tension without using like super crazy dissonant notes. And that way, when you go from like that last G9 down to just straight C, that'll make a really, really settled resolution.
Yeah.
Because
and then the 9. I guess. So maybe this. That's the
There you
map
go.
there. So,
Yeah.
so there's that.
So by adding all those extensions, you're right that it doesn't really feel like resolved, but technically, you only really need to resolve at the end of the song. Okay? If you decide to keep the gist of the tune kind of floating in the air with a lot of suspensions and not quite resolve things, that's fine. Just resolve it by the end. And then the human ear and people's usual expectations of music will be met.
Yeah.
Well, Aldrin, you've used the analogy that it's like telling a story, right?
Yeah.
And that the resolving chord is like your home.
Yes.
So you want the story to go in all these different directions.
Yeah.
And
So
then-
it's kind of like, when you're using the 9s and stuff, instead of going home, it's like you just made it to the front yard or like the backyard or something.
Yeah.
Or like you're technically home, but it's not really like on the couch. Like, man, I am like home, you know? Like, it doesn't have that same feeling. Like, I'm still standing, not really like at home, but I am at home. Yeah.
It seems like maybe like like if you watch a movie or a story where they're like, we'll be back for part 2, and you're like, yes, it ended, but really like conclusion. There's no like feeling of
Thanos snaps his fingers and it's over.
no, I don't,
Spoilers?
I don't feel so good.
Mr. Stark, I don't like this.
I don't feel so good.
So, all right. So now we talked about the 9s and stuff. Is there any other chord substitutions that we can do?
Okay, so the next one that, like I said, we think about
the
going
minors.
major to minor.
Okay. So when do we do that?
So this one is even a little bit more like structured in the sense that because you are changing from a major to a minor chord, you can do that to add some really cool sound in there. On the other hand, you have to be careful because you're running a greater chance of notes to clash. Because now you're actually changing, because remember that the melody is written off of the original chords, hence the original scales. So now if you're picking into different going from major to minor, you're now changing 2 notes within that to something that if it may clash, it may not work. So if you have a C major chord, that's C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. Okay? A C minor chord, natural minor, because we went through all this one too, is C, D, E flat, F, G, A flat, B flat, C. Okay? So that now means there's 3 notes that are going to appear in the chord you're playing that aren't in the scale that you're singing off of. So you can use this, but you have to be very careful that you're not going to end up singing like clashing notes.
Right. So for example, Grace, Amazing Grace, is an E.
Right.
So if you're gonna play a C minor and substitute a C minor in there, it would clash with the E flat of the C minor chord. So you don't really want to substitute it there. Right. So a great way to do, a great spot to substitute that would be Saved a Wretch Like Me.
Yep.
Why? Because that's a G note, which means, it falls in the G chord. It's a G note, which means you can substitute a G minor there instead because you're kind of far away from the clashing note. So
and I should point out that the G appears in both a G major and a G minor chord.
Yeah.
So because of that, it's one of those things that if you're gonna use this technique, try and make sure your melody notes fall into, especially if you can fall in the chord tones of the two different chords. That really helps strengthen your melody line.
I like that callback to the chord tones. Where I don't know if it was the last time you were here, the first time that you were here talking about chord tones.
That was a while ago.
Yeah, it was a while back, right?
ago.
Okay, so let's try it out.
I told you guys, everything builds on itself.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved the wretch like me.
Now, the cool part about that is...
a G or G7.
Yeah, it's definitely not something, again, talking about resolutions, it's not something you'd want to put at the end of your piece.
Yeah.
But if you hear how that sounds, it very much, the G minor sound very much leads you into like, ooh, we have somewhere to go.
Oh man, that G minor, that's crazy.
You know?
Because who would think of a G minor in a key of C, you know? Like, it's crazy.
And so like Alan in the chat, Alan Fasick in the chat, he's talking about substituting relative minors, but what you're doing right now is just like taking the G major and then just
minor. It's not even the relative. It's just straight up that.
But good point, because we actually are going to get to that.
Yeah, we'll get to that. So
that is one of the ones we were thinking of later.
And could you play like that? You were talking earlier about how the C minor wouldn't work. Could you actually play that part and like show like how it would clash, right?
Okay,
like how you might not want to do that.
So because this clashes with that E.
Now, let's be honest here. There are certain kinds of music that won't,
Trent Reznor.
Have everybody seen the Game Room thing? Trent Reznor. Where again, this is for your music. So if by some chance this is what you hear and this is what you want to do, like you hear this and like,
don't let us tell you. It's like that it doesn't work. I'm just saying that in order of what you'd want to like add in, clashing notes like that would be later. Okay, until that's what's really what you want. Yeah,
you know what I mean. If you want to have that dissonance where you hear those two, that tension, kind of like really just create that grindingness in your ears. There are some pieces of music that totally do that, and that's totally on purpose. And that's fine, because again, it's your arrangement. If you want it to have that kind of weird, unsettling feel,
another place that it can work would be that F, because that would be where the F is. So that C, they also share. So that an F and an F minor. So if we were to do it. And it works just fine because it's not clashing with anything. Right. It's it appears in both chords, and they share those
So kind of what we talked about, because kind of what we talked about, the melody line, which is the most important thing in this situation, that's kind of traveling through this song unscathed, and all we're doing is we're kind of changing the framework around it. That's an important thing to remember. Everything else, at least in my estimation, everything else is usually secondary to the melody. The melody is the most important thing, because if you don't have that, what are we playing?
Who composed Bolero? Right?
Ravel.
He says like what's important is the melody line. Everything else is just the sauce, right? Like I think that's a quote from him.
Yeah, so I don't know that I'd never heard that one, but that does sound like something he would say.
Yeah,
and he's very right.
Yeah,
and keep in mind, a lot of things Ravel did. He had all these his most famous piece in the world is Bolero, and that one has this one beautiful melody. It's basically, the song is basically just in two parts. It's a snare drum and whatever's playing the melody. And it's not the whole song. Is there other things in there? Harmonies and melodies? Absolutely. But if you asked anybody what they remember, they would only remember two things: the snare drum part and that melody. That's a good example of having all that side stuff be the sauce, be the stuff to like we showed you with these other chord extensions. The melody is still there, and we're just making the stuff around it slightly more interesting, fills out the chords by adding a couple extra notes. That's really where we are with this. And sometimes you can go the other way and just play me a melody and an accompaniment, and that's it.
Yeah.
You know? And that works too. So, you know, as we've often said on these podcasts, you know, music is so vast. I guarantee you that no matter what it is you're hearing in your head, no matter what arrangement you're trying to make, there's room for it in music. You know? Admittedly, sometimes maybe that room is just for you.
Yeah.
Sometimes
You want to add that C minor?
and sometimes
to that?
sometimes it takes people a while to catch up. A side note: Charles Ives. He was an amazing composer. If you hear his music, it's beautiful. It's very harmonically complex. But Charles Ives, for 30 years, sold insurance, and the reason is because when he started off as a composer and like, I'm gonna write all this amazing stuff, and everybody heard him like, that sounds awful, because he really played with tones and chords and clashings and this. And so when he started, he couldn't find work as a composer or an arranger because nobody So 40 years later, Charles Ives is now like an old dude.
Yeah.
And somebody discovers one of his pieces from like
God,
30 years ago.
Complex.
It's like, yeah, then finally people were ready to hear it and like, oh my God, this is amazing. And they went and found him.
Yeah.
I think in New England, this old dude just sitting on his rocking chair, retired, and all of a sudden like, Mr. Ives, you wrote this piece and I love it. And like, only 30 years too late. You know?
If you had come then, I wouldn't have sold insurance. Another side note, like a great one great song, you know, that us people who like video games will know, because the first time that I heard that substitution was actually in a Legend of Zelda song, in a song called Zelda's Lullaby.
Okay.
So it goes so instead of that D, it's like a D minor.
Oh, yeah.
Because you would normally hit that D in there for the 5, but it hits a D minor. That's what it is. All right. I couldn't remember how to play it.
And when you think about that song and like what it's supposed to mean, it's supposed to be like a melancholy song.
Yeah. So
Like-
to keep it that minor, you know.
Yeah.
it's-
Yeah.
And it's a lullaby, but then it hits that minor, and then you're like, oh, like I feel like a little bit. It's not all just like happy and
Yeah.
sunshine. It's like, oh, there is like a little bit of added
Melancholy. Yeah.
Nightmares.
It's coming.
But I mean that, you know, and that's so one of the uses you can totally hear in that, in choosing to use the minor over the major, is that if you have a song that has a very simplistic sound to it, use substituting minors from majors can give your song a little bit of forward motion, because if you had played the D major like you did, it sounds like it's done.
Yeah, like it could end right there if
Yeah.
you wanted it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But by playing it as a minor,
Yeah.
dun,
Yeah.
You
Something
totally-
has to
Yeah,
happen
something has to
next.
happen.
yeah, you hear the,
Yeah.
okay, we're not done. It has to go somewhere else.
Yeah,
And that can lead you along as you're composing music. Keep that in mind. Judicious use of those 7 chords. You hear that a lot in Hawaiian music. When we're ready to go to like the 4 or something like that, people go from like a C to a C7, then to F. And why do they do that? To show you we're moving on.
Yeah,
we're
passing.
still doing something.
We're over it. We're over that one chord. We're gonna move on.
We're gonna move on. But using those minors, those dominant 7s,
Yeah.
gives it that feel of it's not done and we have to. Now, keep this in mind too. Chords like that can also be used at the end of pieces if your purpose is to actually leave the people hanging.
Yeah. Great example of that is Jake's.
You let me know. You let me know.
And this. Okay, this one I myself don't get. And it's the song "Me and Shirley T." Right?
Okay.
So in the song "Me and Shirley T," in the recording he goes C.
Yeah.
Live, he adds this ridiculous F sharp in there.
As an end.
Just he does it every time, and
he
at
does
the
it every
end,
time?
yeah.
And
So at the end when he goes then it ends on that.
And
It's
he
like-
ends it on that.
So now, funny enough, in every other place, it makes sense because that F sharp
sharp 11
really leads back up into the 1. I'm sure.
because it's he ends in that, so it doesn't lead anywhere.
No, not every other time you use it.
Oh yeah,
You
yeah.
try playing that again and then go on to the next part.
Oh. See, I can't even do it.
There we go.
There, yeah.
So there's that resolution.
Yeah.
So it makes sense in the middle of the pieces, and he's I don't know.
But it's
I
like
think-
Just
conscious.
write in, Jake. Tell us why.
Yeah,
tell us why.
Yeah.
That's
Would that be considered the sharp 11? That F sharp in there? Because 8, 9, 10, 11.
What key is the song in?
C. Is that
Yes.
F sharp.
Yeah.
Or sharp
Yeah.
4.
In the
Would it be
chat.
sharp? Flat 5.
Actually,
Would
that's
it be flat 5?
that'd be the tritone right there.
Yeah. Yeah, flat
We're gonna
5.
get to- we're gonna get to-
let's get to that.
getting
Let's get to
there.
that. Okay.
Actually, no. Technically, it wouldn't be because you're calling it an F, which would make it a 4, an augmented fourth.
It'll be a G flat then.
Yeah, if you want to say it as a G flat,
So that'll
then
be
you
a
could
flat
do-
5.
Yeah.
So like a C flat 5.
Yeah.
Which? Did you have something else
Well,
before we move
in
on?
the chat, Mark was saying that I feel like Jake has a lot of clashing chords when he plays, and that's
And it's on
really-
purpose. Yeah, it's on
really
purpose.
purposeful.
Yeah, it's on purpose.
Yeah.
I think like in that case too, right? It might be one of those times where that is just for him, like
Yeah.
that
Yeah,
he
oh, yeah.
finds enjoyment in leaving that note or that song
Yeah.
unresolved, right? Like ending it and being like, okay, that's it.
So whenever I see him play Me and Shirley T live, like my ears always perk up. Like,
If he-
why would you do
But
that?
you know
Don't
what?
do
But
that.
you know what?
Stop
Think
it.
about this.
It's like
Think about what you just said. Every time he does it, he's gonna do it, and yet your ears
You
still
yeah.
get caught by it.
it's like, you know when like somebody touches you like where you don't want like in your like back of your ear or your neck or something where you're like, why would you touch me? Don't touch me. Like don't touch me there. Like it's fine. Like you hug somebody or like you hug somebody and then like their hand kind of goes like too far like and touches like a weird spot on your neck. Like, oh, don't. I like the hug, but I don't like that. Kind of like I like that chord, but it's nice, but. It's like, don't touch me there. Don't touch me there, Jay. I'm a little uncomfortable.
We've turned this a little stranger than it needed to
That's
be.
strange, danger.
I feel like, and I feel like musicians also have like kind of in jokes where they might put that in, right?
Yeah.
Just to be like,
Oh, absolutely.
I got you guys. I
Classic
bet you guys,
heel move, Jake.
I bet you guys really know this. Like, don't like this, right? But like everybody else would probably be like, anybody in the audience would be like, oh, that sounds a little weird, but
Yeah.
whatever. Like,
Actually, okay,
high
so
level for
we've
that.
mentioned him a couple times when we were talking about Foderas. And actually, Aldrin went and looked at my friend.
Oh,
Shout out to you,
jeez.
Dance and Angelo. And
Jeez.
saw his $12,000 bass.
That's a nice bass.
It was in the show notes. of
Bela
that
Fleck and the
podcast.
Flecktones. For years, Victor Wooten, the band Victor Wooten, had a running bet every night to see who could fit in a quote from The Wizard of Oz into the show and not have it noticed. The person who could fit it in and the other three bandmates didn't notice it was the winner for that night. And so it had to be one song from The Wizard. It could have been any song from The Wizard of Oz. And it had to fit somewhere in your solo or in your groove or something like that. And you had to figure...
Oh, it was like a song?
yeah.
Yeah,
like
so
a
they
line,
had to
like
take
a
one of the
line.
songs from
Yeah.
Wizard of
A
Oz.
line from a song?
Yes,
Ah.
and fit a quote from it into one of the songs in their set that night,
Uh-huh.
but put it in so fluidly
Yeah.
that the other three guys, who also all know this song,
Thought that
wouldn't notice that it
it
was
was
there.
just like a improv or something.
Yes. That made me think of that. That made me think of that because it was like, yeah, So, and they said, yeah, they did that for years on the road, just to see who could
Makes it
pull it
more
off the
fun,
most.
You know what I mean? Like,
Oh,
if you're gonna
absolutely.
play the same stuff, the same exact way every day for like years, it's gonna get
Boring.
soul sucking.
Definitely.
Or I think for us, it's like for the Aloha Friday Jam, it's like a little bit more obvious, right? But then we do things where it's like you will end on one of those weird chords, and it's like, ooh, adding a little jazz to it.
It's jazzy.
The fairy dust.
It's very jazzy.
Making it a little spicy. Yeah.
Okay, so
Okay, so
give us one more. Give us one more.
Let's go to the one that I forget his name. He mentioned in the
Alan.
Alan. Hi, Alan.
Yeah.
That's my dad's name. I shouldn't forget that.
He's like a long-time member. He's
very, very long.
And it's even cool because he talked about in our forum arranging songs for multiple Ukulele parts. So I'm
absolutely.
sure you could take some of this, Alan. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Because when you have the ability to put it over like a ukulele quartet or choir or like that the one from Great Britain, the Ukulele Orchestra of Great Britain, that gives you a ton of leeway to be able to make these really gigantic, amazing chords because you have like 15 ukuleles to work with. Okay, so an easy one is instead of going straight across from major to minor, so G major to G minor, you can also go to the relative minor. Okay, so one of the times I was here, we talked about the circle of fifths,
Yeah,
and
right behind you.
circle.
Yeah.
The circle.
yeah, there we go.
Okay,
Okay,
so let's go and see.
so if you take a look,
Oh, that's G.
Oh, sorry.
no, it's C is on the right end. Yeah, so
it's
C right
C.
there. So if you have the C scale, which is C to C with no sharps and no flats, there is also what they call the relative minor scale. The relative minor scale is A minor. So it's an A to an A with no sharps and no flats.
Yeah.
So for every spot on the circle of fifths, every key signature, 1 sharp, 2 sharps, 3 sharps, there is a minor scale that simply starts on a different scale degree but uses those same notes. If you want to get a little bit more theoretical, whatever major scale you have, start on the 6th note and go to the 6th note again. And use that same key signature. So in this case, C, D, E, F, G, A. So the A would be the 6th degree. And so go to A with no sharps, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A. And that is the key of A minor. Now, what you're going to do is, looking here again, okay, we have C's and F's and G's. What you could do with almost any of these is replace one of these chords with the relative minor. Okay? So any of the C's, you could replace with an A minor.
Would that work in reverse? Like, say, if it was like C, A minor, F, C, G, could it be A minor, C, D minor, A minor, E minor?
Technically,
So
again,
could you go backwards from like minor to major?
absolutely. Why don't we play that?
Okay, so
Let's start with a C. So we'll just do the first 4 chords. C,
So C is
then
A
A minor, then up to F.
So amazing grace,
Yeah, there you
how sweet the sound.
go. Yeah. That chord, I would go back to the C and then
And then go to
they
A
a
minor.
wretch like me.
So it'd be amazing grace, how sweet. Or would you go to the A minor earlier?
I would go on the word grace.
Amazing grace,
And the F.
how sweet
Back to C.
the sound that saved the wretch. Back to C like me.
Yeah.
Or in this case, E minor.
Yeah.
So let's say a wretch like me.
Yep.
That works. Yeah.
So all of these are just basically the relative minors to what it does change the root of the chord. But since you're actually talking about a chord that draws from basically the same notes, you're gonna be fine. Okay.
And you take that, the minors, the 7th minor, amazing grace.
So,
how sweet the
What I wrote over here is also a couple of simple rules here.
Okay.
So there's 3 families right here. And how you substitute one for the other basically is just defined by what is the function of the chord. Okay? So the first group here is the first chord, the minor 3, and the 4, and the minor 6 chord. Okay? Those 3 chords basically can feel like beginning and ending chords. All right?
Okay.
So like you just did with the E minor there, you can substitute, if you have a C right here, you could substitute for an A minor or an E minor in that key, and it would sound pretty good. Okay? This next one over here is the subdominant chords. That's the 4 and the 2. What basically the function of those chords are is they have the feeling of needing to lead somewhere, but not back to the root. So if you play me a C,
Okay.
and then play me an F. Now you could go back to the C at that point, but really, there's a feeling in playing the F again. Feels like it wants to go up, which is why you would go to a G. Okay?
Okay.
So the last family is the dominant. So that would be the these are the 5 and then the 7. Now what both of those do is those are chords that because of their composition lead you directly back to the root chord.
So you could substitute a diminished chord.
Yeah.
your
In
5.
key of C, you could substitute a B diminished for that dominant 7th 5 chord.
So for example, save the wretch like me.
Yeah. It's back to C.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or could I go? I mean, you can definitely hit it right off the bat, but it would sound better if you went to the G and then to the G.
Right.
To the
and
E
then
diminished.
and what you actually do is you're actually kind of doubling up on that, like, ooh, we're going somewhere.
Yeah.
And then the B half diminished is a much more dissonant chord than the G chord is. So it's like you have yeah. So what you're doing is you're adding some tension in that's saying like, ooh, we need to resolve, and then you're topping that with another chord that has even more tension that makes the ear go, I need to get back to a C somewhere.
Yeah.
Could we take like a step back and can you show Aldrin like the 1, 3 and 1, 3, 6 of like the C chord family? Like, so what chords would be considered the tonic of the C chord family? You know, like
The 3 tonic chords is a C major, that's the first one, an E minor, which is the 3rd,
In A minor.
or an A minor.
Yeah, and just show it because like I think you guys mentioned it, but just so if people don't understand like the chord like numbers right yet, like they can kind of hear like what those.
Oh, okay.
chords are.
So here's what we can do. C to F to C right here. Let's play this, but replace this C with an E minor.
Okay.
Okay, and then we'll do it with A.
Grace, how sweet the sound. Beautiful.
And then you can go back to that C. So the E minor has that resting quality, but you also know it needs to go somewhere. Okay, so now let's try that again with being this is an A minor.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound.
Yeah. I hope that makes a little more oral sense to you. But yeah, but you can hear how it sounds rested enough because you don't have these crazy dissonant notes just kind of digging into your ears. But it also adds a little bit of extra color to those chords. So it's not just the problem. The danger with a song like this is that there's so much C.
But what's fun is because there's so much C, because you can substitute so much things for that
Right.
C too.
So if you're playing just C, that can get very monotonous to the ears. So using these substitutions is one way for you to stay in the right key, stay in that same key, keep that same basic tonal picture going without doing something really dissonant, but yet allowing yourself to have some different color here and there that makes it interesting. Okay?
It's kind of like taking like what is it, color by numbers or something. Like you have the outline, and then you just like it's if you started off with like the basic colors, and then somebody's like, oh, here are like 20 more colors that you can add to
Exactly.
it. And
So yeah, if you're doing a color by numbers and color 1 is red, but then I give you red and then fire truck red and then
Orange, red. And
yeah, exactly.
Maroon,
and then it's up to you to see, okay, well, at this particular part of the picture, which of these colors? I mean, number 1 red might still be the one I use.
Yeah.
But it might
still look the best.
right. But it might not be. I might look at it and like, ooh, I think that this type of red
be a
looks
little lighter.
much better. And that's kind of all up to you.
And you mentioned the 4, right? What does the 4 act as? The 4 and the 2?
Subdominant.
Subdominant. The 4 and 2. So it's a leading tone. It's leading chords, but not necessarily leading back to 1.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And for this example, there's C, F, C, G, and there isn't a 2 in there, which would be a D minor, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
So you could even
You can substitute a D minor for that now.
Yeah.
Or you can add a D minor there.
And the F is just to make it clear for people. The F is what
the
we're
four.
That's
calling
4.
the 4.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you can switch between any of the three. So if you have a 4, you can substitute 2 for it. If you have a minor 2, you can substitute a 4 for it.
Yeah, so that's that D minor. How sweet the sound.
Yeah.
D minor there. That same A minor, a rush like G diminished. I C major 7 once, and then to that C9, but F major 7 and D minor, and then A minor, then to G diminished. C. Remember we said we end up in that house on the couch.
So that last one too,
Yeah.
we kind of mentioned it before. You can even substitute it doesn't have to be 1-for-1 substitution where it's like this chord is just gonna take the place of this entire.
No,
chord.
you can move. You can start to actually add it back up. I can do a quick version of this. How much time do we have left?
Not a lot. And I wanted to get to the tritones.
Okay. How much time do you have left?
Like 6 minutes.
6 minutes. Okay.
We can run maybe 10 and push
Okay.
it in.
Okay. So let's talk about tritone substitutions. I'll do this other one try and do it at the same time. Okay. So a tritone substitution. First of all, music nerd alert.
Yeah, it's a doozy.
A tritone is an interval of which you would consider to be a flatted fifth or an augmented fourth. So it's more of an oral thing, like a hearing thing. Yeah. So if you're thinking about the alarm sound from Kill Bill, it's pretty close to that. But interesting about this, it is probably the most dissonant interval you can find.
I just realized you spelled Amazing Grace wrong.
Amazing.
You still spelled it wrong. It's okay.
I'm keeping going.
Yeah,
I'm keeping with it.
Keeping going.
This is Mike is a music major. It's
I'm not an English major.
yeah.
Okay. So there's a way. The reason they call it a tritone is because it's generally 3 whole steps away from each other. Okay. But the way I think about it is take a note, go up to the 5th note,
Right.
and then lower that by half step. Okay? Now, a tritone substitution happens when you have a dominant 7th chord. Okay? It doesn't have to be just only certain pieces like the blues have lots of dominant 7 chords. Generally, in your typical 1-4-5 song, it only happens on the 5. Okay? So what you do is you take the root note of that, go up to a tritone, and use that note as the as your substitution as a dominant 7.
Let's
let
slow
me
this down. Let's slow this down. Okay, so 5
right
on that C in the key of C will be G.
right.
So the
So
tritone will
G A
be
B C D
D flat
D flat.
because you lower.
So
it by
instead
half
of the G7 in a particular
G7.
piece,
step, it'll be a D
you
flat 7.
replace it with a D flat 7.
Could you show the notes on the ukulele that you just talked about, like how they going from a C to a G to
Okay, so C. So we're talking about the 5 chord. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 will be the G. So in our chord family, it would be the G in there. Why are we doing the G in the first place is because he's talking about the dominant sevens. So, in the key of C,
G7,
it's usually G7. Sure, we can go C7 to lead us to the F, and there's a tritone for that as well. We can do that too. But for now, let's focus on the 5, because when we do that G7 right there is a dominant 7 that Mike is talking about. So G7, we have the notes D, F, and B. So that's our G7 chord. But what Mike is saying, the tritone substitution is taking that G. Now, what is the 5 to that G? Which would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, because we're talking about a G scale now. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So D. But just like we said with the tritone, it's lowered by a half step. So we have D flat. So we have D flat 7 instead of G7. So how would that work? So in a sense of that saved a wretch like me, I once, and that's where you can use that D flat 7 tritone substitution. Because I guess you can go straight into it, but it sounds way better like if you go to that dominant 7 first and then to the tritone. But whatever, floats your boat, buddy.
You could.
That's true.
Yeah.
And when you're talking about going to the 5 or going to the 7, all those numbers, it really is just counting, right?
Yeah.
So if you're doing G and you're gonna go to the 5 of that, there's G, A, B, C, D, which is 5 away, and then you just, since it's supposed to be a flat, you just
so
D
flat 5,
flat, D flat.
So D flat. So you can substitute a D flat 7 for your G7 in Amazing Grace, and that's pretty much the only time that it can happen, unless you want to do a C to C7 to F, which is a passing chord. So C7, we talked about it being G flat, right? So I can go from C to G flat and then to F, and then that's what kind of lead me over. G flat 7 will be this or this. So it goes Amazing Grace, how sweet the sound, so we can go to that as well. So it works with that dominant 7, like what Mike was talking about.
And it does work over any dominant 7. It doesn't have to be specifically what you think of as the 5. If there's a dominant 7 chord in the key, in the chord progression somewhere.
Could you, in blues, just play the tritone of everything?
You could.
But you'd be the irritating guy that plays tritones over everything.
Well, technically, if you play tritones over everything, all you'd be doing is just playing the song in a different key.
right. Like,
the whole purpose of the tritone substitution.
Don't invite that guy again. I don't think he knows what key we're in.
Exactly. That's kind of it.
Kind of going back to like minor substitutions. Like, it's one of those things that we said, like, you want to do it once in a while, but you probably don't want to. Because if you just substitute all the major chords that you have in the song to minor, then it's like not really gonna sound like the chord.
That's it. The first problem with doing all major to minor substitutions is that eventually, almost invariably, somewhere in the melody, you're gonna get to a melody note that's gonna clash terribly with a minor chord.
Yeah.
Okay, so you got to be mindful of that, like I said, unless you don't want to. The same thing with doing a tritone. Actually, if you tritone substitution everything in the blues, then all you're really doing is just saying, okay, we're gonna play the blues in G flat instead of playing the blues in C.
So could you though? Could you be playing the blues in C and I could be playing in G flat and it would work?
You could, as far as your solo happens.
So he could be soloing in G flat while you play the C chords.
Yes. Now, keep in mind, that's going to be an incredibly dissonant and very jazzy sort of sounding thing.
We can do that. We can do that right now. You want to hear that? Nah.
Wrote a song about it. Want to hear?
What does that sound like? No, but it's actually really, really cool because back then we talked about tritone before, but we didn't really touch up on it because I was so scared. I was like, tritone is like a completely like different animal that I didn't want to get into then, but now like that Mike brings it up, it's like, let's talk about tritone and why it sounds terrible.
You said it earlier, right? Like, this is pretty deep in the weeds at this point.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
You're
I mean, to be perfectly honest, unless jazz is where you want to go, like if jazz is where you want to go, then this is stuff that everybody uses in that. However, if your aim is to play, cool pop tunes and stuff like that, this is stuff you will probably never see. Very, very rarely. Now, for those of you writing out specific like solo ukulele, chord melody type pieces, where this can come in handy is the fact that since everything has to be created on the ukulele, it's actually pretty useful because you can use it to add color to your arrangements. You don't have to necessarily substitute the whole thing, but you got to realize I could pull this note and stick it in this chord over this melody, and that would work because of that rule. Okay?
I think we always talk about Benny Chong's like Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, right?
Yeah.
And that's basically what he's doing is he's like looking at all his different options and saying like, I'm gonna put them all over this basic melody of Twinkle Twinkle Little Star.
Right. And for those of you trying to work with chord substitutions for the first time, my suggestion to you is do that. Pick an easy song. Because if you try,
great. This song is great.
Yeah, if you try and pick a complicated song to do chord substitutions with, you're gonna set yourself up for like a double whammy, because if you're doing like a really complicated tune, then already the standard chords are gonna be difficult. And then if you want to try and figure out how those substitute to something else, you know what I mean? So basic chord subs, take Amazing Grace, because Amazing Grace.
Amazing.
I'm just gonna keep adding letters until it's not right. Until it's
Show
not even
what it looks like right now.
Amazing Grace.
Amazing.
It looks like a different language. It doesn't look like.
So, real quick, I'm gonna run through one last one. I realize we're at 2:00, but rotation of fifths ending. Okay, so basically, here's how this works. Can you play this for me? Two measures of G7. Okay, so how you can the difference between here to here is a fifth.
Yeah.
Right? So if I want to add something cool into it, I would go another fifth up from the G, where I would get a D minor. So play G7, D minor. Now, to jump down further down the hole, we'll go another fifth back to A7, and then another fifth back. So we're just going up. If we just count from here, it'd be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I'm going to do it to an A7 and then an E minor. So now play this for me.
Very nice.
So, an easy chord substitution. Now, where this would come in real handy is right before the ending of your song. Right before you get to that, back to that root chord. Although you really can use this technique almost anywhere to add just a little bit of interest before you get to a root chord. So, start at the root chord, go back up 5 notes, which is how we got from C to G7. Then go up and back another 5 notes to get to the D minor. Another 5 notes to get the A7. Another 5 notes to the E minor. And we could just keep going. 5, 5, 5,
Would it be 7 and then minor, then 7 and minor?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because basically it's the dominant to the root, right?
Right.
So we're just trying to kind of replicate that. Okay? So it's minor, 7, minor, 7, minor, 7, minor, 7.
Just in case Aaron didn't know, I
Well, I don't know. I learned this from Aaron.
taking Aaron's boot camp class. Aaron's music theory boot camp.
Okay, before we finish, we had a question, and I think we can answer this pretty quickly. So Alan, he's the one who mentioned the relative minor, and he said, I've seen it used in a verse on the second time through to add variation. Seems to work, but I'm wondering why or when else it would work. And that kind of is like if you're playing a song and you play it through the verse normally the first time, and then the second, because you kind of want to present like precedent of what the song normally sounds like, right?
Right.
That's why you kind of do it normal the first time.
So here's the quick and dirty way to think about it. Where can it work? Everywhere. As long as it still meshes with your melody line that you're trying to present. Okay? Just don't throw it in. Again, unless you're looking for something very dissonant. I find that changing from major to minor or relative minor works real good at the end of phrases. You know, if the end of a singing phrase, Amazing Grace, how sweet the song, you could do it there. Who saved a wretch like me? I would do it those two places. Yeah, because number one, you're generally at the end of a melodic phrase, you're ending on one held note, so your chances of not clashing are a lot better. Right there. Okay? So that would be my answer to you. Just try it. First of all, just try it everywhere.
Yeah.
It can't hurt.
I kind of want to try like on that part, wretch like me, because it's a G7 to go to instead of G minor, I'll hit a G minor 7, and then to like lower it down to the tritone D flat 7. Because you got this to that to the C.
So could we end this live lesson where could you maybe like really quickly could you write out like real quick reharm arrangement of just the chords maybe like you would.
Okay, so we'll start with a C.
C.
A C9.
So we got C9. Now let's do a C9.
And
I'll hit a C7 there. And then we'll do a F major 7.
My Illuminati sign. Or Shirkia.
Then E minor for the C there. And then A minor. That's just right before the G. G. And then I'm gonna hit that B diminished. Let's go C. I once was lost. We'll hit that C9 in there with the dominant 7. But now, then D minor. Now, and found maybe A minor 7 in there instead. So instead of the C, let's do an A minor 7. And keep that A minor 7. Then go to the G7. Tritone the D flat 7. Then to C.
Okay.
Oh, it's crazy. Now let's see what we
Can you
have.
hold it up?
Yeah.
Hold
and
It's written out terribly.
and all of these things are like kind of
Yeah.
things that we did talk about.
Yes, absolutely.
today.
Every single one of these.
Yeah.
All right, so
let's try it.
All right, can you maybe play it through it like the one time where it's just like the normal, and then so they can hear like the difference.
pretty cool, guys.
Can you hold it up?
Can you hold it up? What it
Oh,
looks
just
like
hold
the
it
whiteboard
close to
now.
you.
Close.
Pull it back.
There it is. That's what we just played just now. That top line right
That
there.
terrible
It
arrangement.
is whoa. There's a lot of chords in there. So we turned a simple 1-4-5 into some craziness.
Into
Only
a 1,
here.
2, 5, 7, 6, 3, 5, Jenny, 8, 6, 7, 5, 3, 4, 5.
That's how we're gonna end today's episode. Just like how Jake ends his Shirley T. But thank you guys so much. Thank you, Mike. Mahalo for coming in and showing us about chord substitutions. Also, thank you to Aaron Nakamura, Kai the Legend Fergan. Thank you so much. Stick around for Songs Made Easy here on ukuleleunderground.com. And if you want to download this as an audio, check out where you download your favorite podcast. Maybe iTunes, Stitcher, Podcast One, whatever it is. We're probably there. If not, demand it.
Definitely iTunes.
Yeah, definitely iTunes. But if you want to watch this, all the stuff that we've been doing, the only way to just really get all this information is to watch the Thursday live lessons. And the only way to do that is to sign up for UU Plus, Ukulele Underground Plus. What are you waiting for? Sign up now to take your ukulele playing to the next level. We'll see you next time. Aloha!